Hi, I'm Trip Babbitt, and this is the 53rd episode of The Effective Executive. And I'm going to be a little under the weather today, but so if you will excuse the occasional cough. I want to talk about beware the skeuomorphs. Now, what is a skeuomorph? Well, in the late 1990s, I went to a seminar with Peter Schultes, and he wrote the book, The Leader's Handbook. And in it, the book, on page 132, he talked about a skeuomorph, and I'd never heard the term before. And what it is an activity or artifact that continues in use long after its original purpose has disappeared. So he uses the example in the book of, the grandmother went and before she put a ham in the oven, would cut the shank of the ham. And so her daughter and her granddaughter did the same thing. And the reason that she did it, the grandmother, was because the shank of the ham had to be cut down in order to fit into a smaller oven, which the daughter and the granddaughter didn't have that problem. But it kind of illustrates things that go on in our organizations that happen just because they always have. And they're things to look out for within your organization. But you really see them a lot in things like government, especially federal and state, which I've worked with both federal and state, both as in state and as a chief information officer, but also as a consultant, and with the federal government as a consultant. And there are tons of this stuff. I mean, there are people do work, and you ask them, why you do it that way. We've always done it that way. And so there's a series of lots of laws, policies, and rules that just are outdated, or they lack a definition of purpose. And an illustration, I guess, would be, somebody stealing a horse. They could hang them because the horse was your primary mode of transportation. So if somebody stole your horse, you could be stranded at, depending on where you lived in Arizona back in the 1800s. Obviously, that's almost a death sentence. So some of those things are outdated now. They're not needed because we don't have the same problems. But you also get from this, and most of the listeners know that I'm follow the work of W. Edwards Deming. It's what he described as cleaning the table. If you tell somebody to clean a table, they've got to understand the purpose of why they're cleaning the table. Are they going to eat off of it? They're going to do homework on it? They're going to perform surgery? So obviously each one of those scenarios requires a different level of cleanliness for that particular table. So understanding the purpose of what you're doing is illustrated in the form of a skeuomorph, because, the answer, we've always done it this way, and you ask the question why, and they don't know the answer, then you may have a potential problem. And it gives you a sense, especially as an executive, how adaptable an employee would be in the existing system that you have, or do you need to change things that are going on within your system? Now, there are other ways that this comes out. It's the way that I was trained. I'm following the procedure. All things that, unless they understand the broader intent of what you're doing, they've lost the purpose of that particular activity, or maybe never were taught what the purpose of it was. And as someone who questions almost everything, as I went through training in different organizations when I first got out of school, I was that guy. I was the one who always said, well, why? And often I didn't get an answer as to why we just follow the procedure, or, we've always done it that way. Those types of things, and those never set well with me. And I've talked in a previous episode about executive intent. You know, it's better to give people an understanding of purpose and then giving them a goal to achieve, as opposed to just giving them pieces where they don't understand the whole. We could ask Bernie Madoff about that, right? I mean, he kept everybody kind of separated so he could run his Ponzi scheme. So micromanagement without the executive intent is usually what's going on, because you got to make sure they're following the procedure, following the rules, laws are laws, but in essence, things that come out of your particular organization. So there's a need to smarten people up so that they understand the purpose of why they're cleaning a table, why they're doing a particular procedure, because that opens their mind to better ways of doing things. Now, another example that I'll use that it's slightly disconnected, but it connects, is in business models, get disrupted. And if you go back to 2000, when Reed Hastings was setting up Netflix, and he went to Blockbuster and said, hey, you rent movies, we'll do online streaming, we'll partner, and kind of got laughed out of the room. And at one point, Blockbuster had a chance to buy Netflix for $50 million. So you missed it by that much. Even in innovation, because we get stuck in certain models that we believe are going to go on forever, we miss opportunities to either improve our business or come up with new products and services. So that was it for week 53. Hopefully I'll feel better next week, and we'll talk to you then.